4:12 a.m. November 7, 2025. The sky over Ukraine descended into chaos. In less than 30 minutes, Russia launched 45 K-35 cruise missiles and 120 Shahid-type drones, a strike package worth over $200 million. Targets: Kyiv, Pava and Dnipropetrovsk, home to nearly 6 million civilians. Moscow called it Operation Winter Strike. Ukraine called it a deliberate assault, a show of power that plunged entire cities into darkness, but deep beneath Kyiv silence turned into calculation. Operation Spiral Gate was launched. 30 F-16 fighters upgraded with A/AP G68 radars and armed with AIM-120 AMA missiles, a strike package valued at only $4 million. Infiltrated Russian space. Supporting them were 35 UJ-22s acting as decoys. Their objective: a $1.2 billion nuclear energy complex, shielded by S-400 Panzer and Russia's $500 billion air defense network. Can 30 fighters break through Moscow's wall of steel, or will they be swallowed by Russia's multi-billion-dollar defenses? Let's find out. November 7, 2025, 4:12 a.m. Kyiv time. The capital lay under a frozen shroud of darkness until the sirens screamed. In that instant, Russia launched Operation Winter Offensive. 45 to 35 Iran cruise missiles and 120 Shahid-style suicide drones tore across the night sky, obliterating 25 civilian and infrastructure sites across Kyiv, Pava, and Dnipropetrovsk. It was the largest nighttime air strike since the invasion began. Chaos erupted, flooding Ukraine's radar screens. Alarms wailed. Through air bases, a storm of missiles was descending straight toward populated centers. Activate all defense systems, the commander ordered. 30 seconds later, S-300 HIMARS batteries lit up. The 36 interceptor missiles shot upward like lightning. 9 incoming missiles were destroyed midair, but others broke through. The first explosions ripped through Overland District. 12-story apartment block collapsed in 19 seconds, crushing 87 residents beneath burning rubble. A nearby school was completely incinerated. Children's backpacks lay scattered across the snow. At 4:21 a.m., a maternity hospital lost all power. Nurses carried 11 newborns through smoke-filled corridors, guided only by the glow of their phones. By 6 a.m., 38 civilians were confirmed dead, 51 wounded, and over 9,000 displaced. More than 620 residential buildings were damaged. Within just 6 hours, the destruction exceeded $420 million. Kiev's central power grid lost 45% of its output, plunging 1.2 million residents into darkness. Heating stations shut down. Radiators turned cold. Supermarkets burned to ashes. Within 3 hours, in Pava, temperatures dropped to -9 Celsius, 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Families waited in lines for hours to collect boiling water from emergency tanks. Hospitals rationed generator fuel. Only 12 hours of electricity remained for surgical rooms. By dawn, one of Ukraine's key energy facilities had been destroyed, symbol of Moscow's intent to freeze an entire nation into submission. But deep beneath Kyiv, in the underground command center, silence turned to fury. Moscow called it Operation Winter Offensive. Kyiv called it the crime in the snow. And as the smoke drifted eastward, one thing was certain: Ukraine would strike, not with rage but with a precision colder than the snow itself. That morning, the sun had not yet truly risen over the Kyiv sky. Smoke still lingered in the air as President Vladimir Zelensky descended into the underground command center located 18 beneath the presidential residence. Around the table sat Ukraine's top generals, the intelligence director and the energy minister, faces ashen with exhaustion and anger. The reports were brutal: 45 missiles, 120 unmanned aircraft, $420 million in damage, and one of the nation's critical power grids wiped out entirely. More than 1.2 million people remained without electricity. If they want to freeze us, Zelensky said quietly. We will make them feel the cold too. That sentence marked the birth of Operation Spiral Gate, a counterstrike designed not for revenge but for deterrence. The target, the Kienan nuclear power plant located near Udlya Oblast, roughly 200 m northwest of Moscow. Facility employing more than 1,000 engineers and civilian staff, regarded as one of the pillars of Moscow's energy empire. Hitting it would not only damage the economy, it would humiliate the Kremlin. The Ukrainian Air Force presented its weapons 30 F-16 Fighting Falcons recently, upgraded with A/APG-68 radars capable of detecting enemy aircraft at ranges of 180 kilometers and armed with AM-120 RAM missiles that reach Mach 4 and have a 100 kilometers range. Supporting them, 35 UJ-22 airborne UE, valued at $100,000, would act as bait to expose the Russian air defenses. Facing them was Russia's S-400 Triumph, a $800 million air defense system, and Panzer S-1 batteries valued at $15 million each, all protecting a plant considered untouchable. Inside that dim bunker, everyone understood what lay ahead. Ukraine had lost $420 million in a single night. They would gamble USF-funded weapons to achieve a target worth $1 billion. And when Zelensky gave the order, the words echoed around the room. Let them know Moscow is not untouchable. Will Russia's untouchable shield truly stop the storm that Ukraine is about to unleash? 3:58 a.m. November 8, 2025. The night on Ukraine's border was very quiet. Too quiet. Then one by one 30 F-16 Fighting Falcons taxied down the frozen runway near Myhord Air Base. Engines thundered like storms beneath the starry sky, rattling the icebound ground. Operation Spiral Gate had moved from plan to execution. Each fighter carried 2 M120 AMRAAM missiles and a load of precision-guided bombs. Radars were locked onto the Russian border, while a small humble aircraft, a UJ-22 airborne UAV worth just $100,000, launched ahead. Its mission: lure the Russian air defense network into the pin. At 4:27 a.m., the UAV violated enemy airspace. Within 90 seconds, radar signals erupted across western Russia. Panzer S-1 systems protecting the energy complex activated and locked onto the false target. 5 interceptor missiles, each costing $1 million, were fired into the sky. The result: a plume of white contrails chasing a UAV that cost less than a luxury car. From Ukraine's control room, officers watched the screens light up in silence. Target illumination confirmed. One said, "They've taken the bait." As the $5 million volley struck the decoy and detonated among the clouds, the real strike package climbed from 10,000 m, slicing radar signatures with a precise formation. Every passing minute drained Russia's coffers. $7.3 million burned in operational losses, while Ukraine lost only a single drone. But Moscow's defense operators, blinded by their own radar jamming, mistook the phantom signal for a full-scale airstrike. S-400 complexes, each missile costing $2.5 million, began firing into the sky. In less than 5 minutes, more than $40 million of ammunition vanished. Night sky erased by a wasted storm of fire. Meanwhile, under the radar horizon, the F-16s flew low, hugging terrain at Mach 1.2. The pilots said little. Every breath matched the rhythm of war. Calm, mechanical, certain. 4:36 a.m., the command message passed through encrypted channels. Stage 1 complete. Begin attack. The trap had worked. Russia's shield was broken. In the next 10 minutes, the costliest error in Moscow's air defense history would unfold. A battle where $4 million of Ukrainian steel would destroy $500 million of Russian pride. They thought the new decoy was the real threat, but the real storm had not yet even begun. Stay with me. The sky over Moscow is about to erupt. 4:06 a.m. Udmya Oblast. The night sky glowed red. Above the Kienan nuclear power plant, Russia's pride pride now its most vulnerable. Secret. 30 F-16 fighting Falcons pierced Russian airspace at 10,000 m. Their afterburners, leaving glowing scars across the frozen. Each jet carried a payload of two A-120 Ram missiles and precision-guided bombs, a strike package valued at $3.8 million yet capable of inflicting hundreds of millions in losses within minutes. Below them, Moscow's S-400 Triumph defense system worth $800 million and a web of Panzer S-1 batteries, each launcher valued at $15 million, scrambled to respond. At 407 m, 12 interceptors worth $30 million roared upward, their trails twisted through the darkness, hunting for heat. Within 90 seconds, 11 of the 20 inbound threats were destroyed, but the remaining 9 broke through, and what followed changed the map of Russian confidence. 3 A-120s struck the reactor complex, each carrying a 50-pound high-explosive fragmentation warhead, detonating deep within the steam generator hall. The blast tore through the reinforced containment layer, designed to withstand earthquakes and airstrikes. A plume of fire rose nearly 1,000 m high, visible from 25 m away. Seconds later, 5 missiles tore into the cooling tower network and turbine chambers, collapsing 400 tons of steel and concrete. The last missile hit the main electrical switchyard, cutting 2.4 GW from Moscow's grid, enough to power 1.5 million homes. The city's western sector fell into darkness for 14 minutes before emergency rerouting began. Inside the control center, chaos reigned. 12 dead, 470 seriously injured, and 2,312 emergency calls flooded Moscow lines. Within 20 minutes, the explosions shattered 3,800 windows, buckled 7 bridges, and caused indirect industrial losses estimated at $600 million. Nearby, hospitals running on backup power treated burns and trauma injuries non-stop for 18 hours. By 4:22 a.m., reconnaissance confirmed it. Plant was burning uncontrollably. Cameras captured scenes of workers fleeing under falling debris. Helicopters circling the inferno in vain. And at 4:25 a.m., as the last F-16s crossed back into Ukrainian airspace, one encrypted transmission echoed through the Kiev command room. Targets neutralized. Moscow's wall is broken. 30 aircraft, $4 million in ordnance had shattered $1.2 billion worth of infrastructure, and the illusion of Russian invincibility, the balance of modern warfare, had shifted. Speed, precision, and psychology, not size, now ruled the sky. 6:30 a.m. Moscow woke not to sunlight, but to the taste of ash. From the western skyline, a 14 m column of smoke still rose from the crippled nuclear complex. Inside the city, metro tunnels stood silent, and more than 2.3 million residents faced blackouts. Energy grid had lost 2.4 GW, collapsing power in 7 administrative districts. Traffic lights died. Hospitals switched to backup generators. The heartbeat of the capital silenced in a single night. At 7 a.m., an emergency meeting convened inside the Kremlin's subterranean war room. President Putin, pale and expressionless, was handed the first casualty report. 30 dead, 477 injured, 1,000 displaced workers, and $1.2 billion in losses. The nuclear plant that had symbolized Moscow's strength was now an open wound, and its images had already gone viral across the world. By mid-morning, Russian intelligence agencies confirmed what the Kremlin feared. The attack was executed by a Ukrainian F-16 squadron using NATO standard encryption. Satellite data exposed the precision. Every missile strike was within 3 meters of its intended target. The humiliation was complete. 9 a.m. across Europe, NATO held an emergency summit in Brussels. Condemnation came. Instead, a classified communique surfaced. Ukraine exercised legitimate self-defense. Hours later, the U.S. approved another $800 million aid package, including $250 additional UAVs and electronic warfare modules. In Kiev, celebrations were muted. Zelensky's command bunker remained lit by screens showing Moscow in flames. This isn't victory. hungry, he said softly. But a message. That terror has a cost. By noon, international markets reeled. Russian energy index fell 11%, erasing $23 billion in value in a single trading. Panic rippled through global exchanges, and as the fires burned into afternoon, the world realized something irreversible. A $4 million Ukrainian strike had crippled a $500 billion Russian defense architecture. Steel walls had failed. Algorithms had won. War had changed forever. Can build fortresses of concrete and iron, but history always finds a way to fly through the window. By nightfall on November 8, 2025, the fire in western Moscow had dimmed, but the world it left behind would never be the same. Kremlin's proud towers stood against a red horizon, silent, humiliated, and exposed. For the first time in decades, Russia's invincibility had been pierced, not by nuclear power or economic might, but by precision, calculation, and human resolve. In Kiev, the lights flickered back on after nearly 40 hours of darkness. Families gathered in basements and stairwells, holding candles, whispering prayers. They had lost homes, hospitals, entire neighborhoods. Yet the news of the counter-strike brought something the Russian missiles could not destroy. For the first time, Ukrainians felt that the terror raining from the sky could be answered, measured, and punished. The numbers told a story that would echo in history books. $4 million in ammunition had shattered $1.2 billion in Russian assets, exposed the flaws of a $500 billion defense network, and disrupted a nation of 140 million for more than 48 hours. Economists called it the most cost-effective strike in modern warfare. Analysts called it the day deterrence was reinvented, but for those who lived through it, it was simply survival. As dawn approached, Zelensky addressed his people from the command bunker, his voice but steady. They tried to freeze our nation. Instead they awakened it. That sentence would circle the world, replayed in capitals and military minds alike, because the true lesson of the winter fire wasn't about destruction, it was about transformation. Proved that technology, courage, and precision could outweigh fear, wealth, and arrogance, and that sometimes the smallest spark lit in the darkest winter can set the world ablaze. If you found this analysis insightful and want to support more in-depth breakdowns like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next unfolding conflict.